there learners. In the last program, we learnt about various mechanisms of sound technology. Now, in this program, we will learn about audio mixing console, the different parts or sections, working and their uses. Mixing consoles not only allow simple mixing, but they can also provide phantom power for condenser, capacitor microphone, pan control, filtering, equalization, routing, and monitoring facilities which enable routing any number of sound sources to a desired loudspeaker for listening without affecting the mixer's main output. Now let's talk about a simple analog mixer or stereo mixing console. A simple analog audio mixer combines several incoming signals into a single output signal. This cannot be achieved simply by connecting all the incoming signals in parallel and then feeding them into a single input because they may interfere with each other. The signals need to be isolated from each other, providing individual control of at least the level of each signal. Now let us discuss a simple 6-channel analog audio mixer. This particular mixer will have 6 inputs and 2 outputs. Professionally, we call it as a 6:2, that is 6:2 mixing console. The inputs will usually be XLR, TRS-Tip ring sleeve or balanced and TS-Tip sleeve or unbalanced. The outputs are also in 3-pin XLR type connectors. The outputs are XLR male connectors having 3 pins. The inputs will be having XLR female connectors. We are using condenser microphone. We need to supply the microphone with plus 48V DC current from the audio mixer to operate the microphone. The signal received from this microphone will then be routed to a stereo or master bus. A bus is a section in the signal part of an audio mixer which is used to combine different audio sources and deliver them as a whole to a specific destination. There are also mixers used which have multi-track utilities known as multi-track mixer. Music recording generally requires 2 distinct stages. The first is track laying. The musical tracks are recorded on a multi-track recorder separately. These include background tracks, rhythm tracks, followed by lead tracks and vocals. Next is mix down stage. All the recorded tracks, vocal and music are played back through the mixer and combined into a stereo or surround mix to make the finished product which is made into a commercial release. While handling consoles, more than one signals need to be controlled, which is called grouping. Grouping means simultaneous control of more than one signal at a time. It usually means that one fader controls the level of a number of slave channels. It is usually used for reducing the number of faders that the sound engineer or operator has to handle. This is applied when there are more number of faders to be operated. So we need to make a group of faders and controlled by one fader. There are 2 types of grouping. Audio grouping. Well, it means making a single audio output to take a number of channel inputs. A single fader controls the level of the summed signal and there will be a group output from the console. The stereo mix output from the console is an effective audio group, one for the left and one for the right, as they constituted a sum of all the signals routed to the stereo output and includes the overall level control. Some older consoles will have routing buttons on top of each channel module. The master fader for audio groups will be in the form of 4 or 8 faders in the central section of the console. Now we have control grouping. Control group is different part from audio grouping because it doesn't give rise to a single summed audio output for the group. The levels of the faders in the group are controlled from one fader, but these outputs remain separate. Generally, its effect is to a large hand moving many faders at the same time, each fader maintaining its own level in relation to the others. Control group is controlled by voltage controlled amplifier, that's VCA. Its gain is controlled by a DC voltage applied to a control pin. In VCA, fader audio is not passed through the fader itself but is routed through VCA, so the fader carries DC instead of audio and the audio is controlled indirectly. The latest alternative to the VCA fader is the DCA fader, that's digitally controlled attenuator, whose gain is controlled by digital values, binary instead of DC voltage. Here, for better understanding, we need to discuss about auxiliary sends. Auxiliary sends, referred as Aux Sends, are taking the signals from either the channel or mixed parts and appear as outputs from the console, which can be used for foldback to the vocal booth musicians, effects ends, cues, and so on. Aux sends are often a combination of mono and stereo buses. Mono sends are usually used as routes to effects, while stereo sends may have one level control and a pan control per channel. Aux Sends, while it controls for the level of each individual channel in the numbered aux mix. We also have pre-post switch. It determines that whether the signal send is taken off before or after the fader. It is then the send will still be live even when the fader is down. Effect sends will normally be taken post-fade. We also have mix channel, which determines whether the send is taken from the mix or channel parts. It will often be sensible to take the send from the channel part when effects are to be recorded onto multi-track rather than onto the mix. This function is labeled wet. Then comes the mute. It will cut the number sent from the aux mix. Now let's know about master control section. This section, which is normally placed on the right-hand end of the audio console, or now in the digital mixers, it is in the middle of the console. It has many facilities, like monitor selection. It means it will feed the signal to the loudspeaker of the control room or studio, but not the mix output. There are many switches to select the source to be monitored, like Aux Sends the main stereo mix on tape machines. We also have dim. It will decrease the level of the signal feed to monitor around 40 dB for quick silencing of the room. Next comes in the list record, overdub or mix down. This facility depends on the mode of operation, the mic line, input switching, large and small faders and auxiliary sends. This will override the signal on one another or it will dub the signal on an appropriate position. Then comes the auxiliary level control. Now this is the master control for setting the overall level of each auxiliary sends output. Talkback or foldback is usually placed on the console having a small built-in microphone, which is usually used for giving instructions to the studio hands or instrumentalist. From the control room and which can be routed to a number of destinations like Aux Sends, mix bus or studio loudspeakers. We also have oscillation in the list. For analog tape recording, we need the magnetic tape to be given bias, which is aligning signal frequency of accurate 1 kHz and 10 kHz tone. The 10 kHz tone is the accurate setting, the bias of an analog tape machine, in which the tone 1 kHz or 10 kHz is fed to the tape from the mixers, oscillators option, or sometimes it is given from the tape recorder facilities option. We also have Slate. The Slate would be used for recording take information onto tape. Next comes the master faders. There may be either one stereo fader or left and right faders to control the overall mix output level. Often the group master fader will reside in this section. In the next lesson, we will learn about the installation and disassembling of sound equipments. So learners, this lesson has taught us the functioning of an audio console and the important role it has to play in sound mixing.